So that was all for village roads?
Yes.
I actually had a question.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Richard.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm done, thank you.
When I had discussed some things with the council a couple of months ago, it was clarified to me that the retainer for legal services, what I had been saying was $6,000 per month with the law firm. He corrected me, by ordinance, it's actually $7,500 per month for the retainer for legal services. So I wanted to thank you for that clarification on the retainer. Why is it coming up? I thought I just saw 6,000 in there. Is that on the check register correctly, or?
The contract is for $7,500.
Yep.
When the village encountered financial difficulties, which my understanding is still continuing, I agreed to only bill the village $6,000.
Okay. Well, I was just confused because you had told me in that email that it was 7,500.
It is.
Okay, so you agreed to do it for 6,000 then?
Agreed to bill the village at least $6,000.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. There was confusion there. I wanted to make sure that was on the record correctly. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anything else? No. Okay, hearing no further questions, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the financial report for the month ending November 30th, 2013 as presented. Moved by trustee Schoffer, is there a second?
Second?
Second by trustee Wittenberg. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Continue to chair, the ayes have it. Motion carries. Next item is the approval of board meeting minutes for the regular board meeting December 12, 2013. Are there any additions or corrections on any of the first 3 pages? Pages 4 or 5. 6 or 7. Madam Chair would entertain a motion to approve the board meeting minutes of the regular board meeting for December 12, 2013.
I make a motion.
Moved by trustee Wittenberg, Henshaw, second
Second.
by trustee Wittenberg. Thank you. Subliminal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Continue chair, the ayes have it. Motion is approved. Okay, 2 basically discussion items this month on the agenda. We have been notified, as we have passed consistently each year for the past couple of years, that reflecting the rate increase from the city of Countryside for the water we purchased from them, ultimately from Lake Michigan. Chicago continues with their water rate increases to the suburbs. This year's increase was 15%, and that constituted, as I understand it, 44 cents per 1,000 gallons of water increase from Chicago to McCook. McCook added 4 cents to that and raised it to making it 48 cents, which they passed along to Countryside. Countryside determined to pass that 48 cents along as is to the village effective January 1st, 2014. So this will necessitate us to raise the water rates to keep up with that, or if somebody wants to suggest that we pass along only part of it or none of it, I don't think our village finances are in a position to allow us to do that, and I'm going to recommend that we have council prepare an ordinance for us to enact in February to pass the 48 cents per 1,000 gallons along to the residents, just reflecting the increase upstream, as it were, that we get from Countryside. Countryside adjusts their rates to us every 2 years, so this is not the appropriate time for that to add on. But I think there's still one more of the most current round of increases from the city of Chicago that will occur next year. We had some previously, there were 3 years' worth, and I think we had a respite, and then they increased it by, I believe, 25%, and announced at that time that they would increase by 15% each year thereafter, and this is the second of the 15% increases. So, not happy about it, but it's like the cost of gasoline, it's what it is at the pump, and that's what we have to pay.
Wasn't there a proposal to have a line run out of Lake Michigan west to Naperville or something like that, and not have to deal with the water treatment in Chicago?
Yeah, I heard that proposal. Some of the southern suburbs are running water lines through Indiana and then buying it from Indiana and would get it from Lake Michigan. I've also heard a proposal of getting it, it's either through Evanston or Waukegan to run a line and come that way, but as you can imagine, it takes a lot of money to do that, and there's been no real push to try to get a consortium of villages or towns together to do that.
It might be worth looking at.
I know our village is a member of the West Central Municipal Conference. They created a water rate task force. They've had some negotiations with the city of Chicago, nothing to any avail yet, but they're also looking into other options, including either trying to have legislation passed that would, in effect, regulate the water coming from Lake Michigan, or perhaps litigate to stop the rate increases from the city.
But now, are we getting raw water or are we getting processed water?
Ed,
You're getting Chicago water from the city of Chicago.
but has it been
Treated.
processed or filtered, it's
Processed water,
treated?
so we don't have to further process it.
Once we pump out of our reservoir, we'll treat it with chlorine.
And treat it with chlorine?
Unless we
Oh,
pump out of the
unless-
reservoir.
Yeah.
Any comments or disagreement on that? Next month will be the month to vote on it, but I just wanted to put that on there. Alert everyone, including our residents, that the water rate increase is coming. We can't stop that.
I believe,
Trustee Hinchcliffe?
yes, thank you. I believe the way we're set up, the water system is supposed to be cash neutral, or what we make, we spend on the water that we pay the countryside and repairs. So it's not a profit center, and it's not supposed to be a loss, it's supposed to pay for itself. Recently, we went through the exercise of Public Works and Frank and his team putting together a wish list of items that we would like to get. And I believe on that were several things that were non-road related. Some of the storm runoff, there were some tanks, reservoirs, painting, various things that might be tied to the water system. I know we're depreciating $94,000 a year, which I think is fantastic. But if those things that came up on the wish list are things that we want to look at doing down the road, we may need to look at how we're going to pay for that. And so I bring it up as we're talking about a rate increase. I'm not saying that we need to increase over the 48 cents, but there were some fairly high-priced items. I remember a tank or a reservoir, a couple $100,000. And so if we really need that, we may not need it this year, but if we need it in 8 years or 15 years, how are we gonna pay for that $200,000 tank or reservoir? And I think if you add those up, it was over $1 million of things that were on the wish list. So again, I think the water should be neutral, and so if we have these projects that are looming, I don't know if we have a capital plan, I don't know that we have a way to pay for those. I'd love to understand that, but with the information I have, it looks like we're gonna be deficient in paying for some of those big projects.
Well, and the one item that I'd just like to bring to the attention is we talked about the water meters. And if I'm not saying it could happen at this time with your ordinance that you're bringing together, but maybe that's the way we plan in the future to include that item potentially, because that's something that we'll probably have to do at some point. It's gonna become a requirement, not a nice to have.
But I think that one also has a reduction in expense, a little bit. So anyway,
It's not,
I would love in the next month to have some idea of what is needed, the roadmap of how we're gonna do it, how we're gonna pay for it. So if the 48 cents will cover that, great. If we need to go to 52 cents to try to build up some reservoir or more depreciation, I think this is one of those times in the village that we have this opportunity. That's my 2 cents.
In terms of the capital program, my understanding of the process that you referred to that we went through with the, it was streets and infrastructure, and that was all part of that, and the board decided to break off the part about the streets to seek the street bond, and to see if we could get that voted on by the residents. Those things are there, and they have to be dealt with sooner or later, but there's a timing, and, that's not the proposal right now with the street bond to add on. Yeah, we could raise, we need to raise rates in several areas. That's something we can look at. In terms of a roadmap, how much we need, I don't remember what the figure is.
I don't have it in front of me.
But it was $1 million or so, it was sizable.
No, excuse me, I didn't clarify. I'm talking about the new water meters.
Yeah, it was
The trustee would-
I think the
250 was it?
water meters are like 250,000.
Yeah, 250, I think.
But I think if we need the water meters, when do we need them? Is it 2 years or 8 years? Whenever it is, and then how do we save the money to do that? Because it sounds to me, or as I look at it, the depreciation of $94,000 a year is about enough to pay for the water mains that need to be replaced if we do one every 2 or 3 years. They were all about 250, 200, 300. So if we're saving 94,000, we can do one every 2 or 3 years. So I know they all said, or they said they need to be done now, but we could probably do those in 12 years. But that's just the water mains. All the other stuff, I don't see how we're gonna pay for that.
Well, one way that occurs to me is not only in adding on to the water rate itself, but it's also could be a one-time charge per user. If I don't know how many units is factored into the price, but if it costs a homeowner, if it's $300 for a unit for that water account, that gets passed along to that account, and the payments can be spread out. And then once they pay for the new water meter, and hopefully they will last a number of years, you don't have the underlying charge on the water usage itself.
Well, I think that's a great idea, but I guess my point is looking at the big picture. If those things are really on the horizon, is it a year or 5 years or 20 years? Again, how we can pay, if we gotta pay $1 million worth of stuff, as we know with the road issue, it's gonna take a lot of money, and a lot of time.
Trustee Walsh.
I think trustee Hitchell brings up a good point. I think it's worth our consideration. Frank, what I'd ask that you do for the next meeting is, in the event we did add an additional 5 or 10 cents onto the tax, the increase, what type of fees would that generate for the village? I don't know, if we had 5 cents on, how much would we generate?
Right.
And then could we allocate that additional 5 cents to a specific account, I assume we could, to take care of some of these long-term projects? I think it's definitely worth considering. But I think we need more information as to how much money that'll generate as compared to a one-time fee.
Well, let me, you have your computer there, maybe you can pull up the calculator. I think we budget based on 108 million gallons per year. Based on, we're selling them in units of 1,000. So,
You wanna do
Well,
that?
Big-
A lot of zeros?
A lot of zeros to put on a little calculator, so. Well, maybe for the next meeting, you could actually have that for us, so that we can actually take a look at it.
I think that's good. To know whether we're gonna raise 20,000 or 200, but I think we also need to know what we need to
That
raise.
could go out, that could go out to all the trustees with.
And I think Tom brings up a good point. I mean, if we're gonna raise it to 48 cents, and there's a reason why we're gonna raise it to 52 cents, let's tackle the issue when it's here and deal with it at the same time, rather than coming back 6 months from now and talk about raising it again. I think it's worth our consideration.
We just
The water
had the
meter.
countryside, this was it last spring or was it 2012? I forget what the cycle was.
And I gotta look where we're at, it's probably coming up a year.
Ed, do you know off the
The
top?
water meter you're talking about, you're talking about the one in your house.
Excuse me,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mr. Mayor.
I asked you, do you recall if the biennial water rate increase from Countryside, that's our contract with them, if they adjusted it last spring, or was it the year before?
I thought it was last year.
Yeah.
So that's it.
That's what I thought too, so, okay. So they, you know, typically what we have done is in conjunction when Countryside has decided what they needed to add on to us for their infrastructure, we address our needs there and in between. Not saying you can't do it differently, I'm just saying that would be a time rather than 6 months from now to raise it again, but, you know, there's several possible ways of going about it.
I think what we're sort of talking about here is actually to have a calendar for water department activities, and to understand our rate increase math, which we already know from the city. We already know a lot of this happens in January and the spring when we get the water rate increases. And what we're saying is, we need to dovetail our capital plan into our fiscal plan for revenues. So we don't have to keep going back to the citizenry in a piecemeal fashion and asking for more money. So we can ask once and have it in the capital plan, so when we know we need the money, we'll have it there and not have to have another referendum to ask for more money. So we're, in effect, like CSPAR does, is they do strategic planning. They have a forward-looking view, as she explained, about the future, short, mid, and long term. And what we're proposing is to try to dovetail that into our water department and our public works department, as well as our other infrastructure. So we know exactly what we're gonna need, and then we'll have a contingency fund for those emergencies that we know happen, that we cannot plan for.
Yeah, typically, you know, we've not had a referendum where we've asked for money from all of the residents to fund the water supply, which only goes to about 85% of our residents. It's always been tied to.
But that's why he's suggesting we put it on the water bill. It won't go to the whole
That's
bill.
that's exactly how you have to do it,
Right.
unless you're gonna have people
So then we can plan.
that
these
are
things.
outside our water system, paying for the water system.
Right.
Just like we can't, you know, it wouldn't be right to raise the water rate to use to fund general improvements in the village, because again, only 85% of the people would pay for that.
Totally understand. We're just trying to, have a plan so we can get the money when we need it, and the community understands the plan, so they know we have a plan. It may not always go that way, because of unforeseen circumstances, but at least they know we have this plan.
But, I kind of thought that was what this exercise we did over the summer was with the infrastructure and capital plan and streets, so
It's
that
one-
can
it's one
continue,
part of it.
so.
It's one element of a multi-pronged effort. It's the street portion. We didn't do anything with the water portion.
Right.
Or the sewer, or the storm. No, storm is probably village-wide, right? Water definitely is the 85%.
The storm
Stormwater.
system from Ashbrook, is that ours?
That's part of our system.
Okay,
Ashbrook.
Uh,
how about the, like Hiawatha and Sequoia?
Yes.
So stormwater is ours throughout the village, but the water supplies Highlands or Indian Head.
Right, correct.
Okay.
Rich, when you said the 1.8 million units,
It's 108 million gallons divided by 1,000,
okay,
because we sell the water, like 1 gallon of gas is so much. Our unit of water is 1,000 gallons, so divide 108 million by 1,000.
okay.
Multiply that by 5 cents, if that's what you want to add on, and that will tell you how much additional revenue we'd expect more or less to generate in a year's time.
All right, so I think that's either 5,000 or 50,000. John?
5 cents would be 5,000.
5,000.
Right. You're selling 108,000 units. So then 10 cents a unit would get you 10,800.
So
This is-
$54.
this- Slash your zeros.
So 5,000 for a nickel increase doesn't sound like a lot when we looked at that list of $1 million. And again, that million may not be needed for 20 years. I don't know that we put dates on it. But if we gotta do it, we gotta do it at some point and, start planning.
We have residents in town that call up every time the rate goes up, whether it's because we raised it or because we're passing it along.
Yeah.
It's a hot button item to the
I'm
residents.
not saying I wanna raise rates, but I do wanna take care of the village, and if we need a reservoir for $300,000, we need it, we need to pay for it somehow, someday.
It's on the list with all the other stuff we need.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's on the list, but I don't know that we said when is it due, and I know that may vary by a year or two, but then if it's due in 10 years, how do we pay for it? The capital plan.
That's a good point.
I think it's worth discussing when we talk about rate increase.
I'm still going to ask council, at least at this point, to prepare an ordinance for next time to pass along the 48 cents. And, you know, if we decide at the next meeting, I think we can make a pen in each correction if we made it 5 cents more or 10 cents more. Yeah, we could do that verbally at the meeting. Yes.
Good. Is it fair to ask, Frank, can you take a swag at that wish list or that capital plan? Some of those were due
Well,
now.
we have it somewhat, so we could tighten it up, like, we have some are 5-year or 2-year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can kind of leave it there a little bit more. I think that's, because we're already know what it is and what the finish.
Not the road, but the water,
The
or
water, right.
I think just the water here, probably not sewer, or I guess sewer.
Well, storage sewer, we really don't know, because we're gonna start televising it, so you don't know
Yeah.
what needs to be done until you, like, correct that.
Just
until you
put
start.
the camera down the line.
Put the camera down the lines and they'll get it out. That we should be doing, and we are gonna start doing that. And then within a year or two, we should get a picture of what it all looks like. And know what we need to do there. But the other water issues that we know, we can tighten it up a little bit.
Thank you.
Anything else on the water? No? You know, we're talking about it, I'll entertain comments from the audience about the water increase.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Say your
John
name and address,
Corcoran,
please.
6417 Apache Drive. It's the same comment I made about the streets, but the water, it's even simpler. It costs X amount to open your tap, and the village isn't making money. Frankly, I suspect the village is losing money on it because we're not funding the infrastructure. It's just what it costs. There's no other explanation. It just is what it is. And you know, again, until we start building up money, then we're gonna be behind the 8 ball when water mains continue to break or the reservoir rusts out or whatever happens. So I don't think there's much to discuss. We gotta charge what it costs.
Okay,
Yeah, I
thank
would agree. I think that you need
you.
to.
Could you say
approve.
your, we know who you are, but for the record, could
Oh,
you please say?
Speak to the cameras
Um,
loudly. I'm kidding.
Loudly enough. Tom Heaney, Plainfield Road, 11311, West Plainfield Road. I think this whole thing is exactly right. You've got to start accruing funds for things that you're going to anticipate in the future. If you don't do that, you're going to be constantly chasing your tail, and that's not a good way to operate. And you can't keep going back to the taxpayers. You can go back and ask them for a nickel, but you can't go back and ask them for a dime. It's a whole difference. And you look at a dime different than you do a nickel, is what I'm saying. And $100,000, $200,000, those kinds of numbers, if you have it in the piggy bank, it looks like you're managing, you're doing a better job. If you have to go back and increase taxes and do stuff like that, that's a no-no. If you can do it gradually, it's an easier hit on you if you do it gradually rather than all at one time, dropping on the table. But those overhead water tanks, I've been involved with those, they're very expensive to paint. It's amazing how much money they get to paint those. And so, you know, $1 million wouldn't be a big deal. And you don't want that, particularly with your budget the way it is, you don't want someone to drop $1 million.
Couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Haney. You know, over time, unfortunately, that hasn't been the place. It It's been going on for years that we haven't been able to build up. In fact, we were going the other direction. But then I became mayor in '07, and we've changed the deficit in the general fund from a negative 700,000 to a plus 100,000. You may not have been aware of that.
No,
Those a
I'm
couple
just pointing
people
out
in
the
the
facts.
audience appreciate that too. But the point I'm making is we've gotten ourselves into a hole, we're slowly climbing out of it, and people, my experience and understanding has been people hate to be nickel dime. They wanna know what you need. Tell us. Don't tell me I need 5 cents here, 10 cents there, $5 on a vehicle sticker. They don't want that. They wanna know, what do you need, and I'm gonna tell you yes or no. And we've gone to the people a couple of times, and, you know, the economy, whatever, people are not of a mind to it. Who would have thought, 5 months after a tragedy, that the people would vote against the referendum that would allow us to hire an extra police officer? I certainly did. But, so your point, but it's not for the want of trying. We've tried to do that.
I understand that. But what I'm telling you, you don't have a revenue problem. Or what I'm trying to say is you don't have a revenue problem, you have a spending problem. And until you address the spending problem, that's when you increase your revenue. Reduction in spending increases your revenue, because that's your revenue stream coming in. When you adopt that and you start to look at ways that you can reduce your costs, and there's ways within this village that anybody comes in, that they could show you, anybody that knows how to work the numbers and knows how to manage, can come in and show you how you can reduce the cost of operating this village. And that's one of the problems that the citizens of this village has with the board, is that kind of action hasn't been taken in the past. You come back to them and you say, I want more money for taxes, and they're saying, what are you doing about reducing your costs? If this was a business and you weren't reducing your cost, you'd go out of business, you'd file bankruptcy. Like Detroit, you filed Chapter 11. So that's what aggravates the citizens. I'm gonna tell you it aggravates me too, is that they come back and say, we need more money, but what are you doing about reducing the cost? And let me just one item there, on this new, what do we call it, bond issue. Okay, if you wanna sell that bond issue, I'm giving you a straight scoop. You've gotta convince the people of this community, in order to buy onto that bond issue, that there's something else being done besides the bond issue that's going to be recognized as reducing costs. We're not doing this, but we're doing this also. We have these plans, we have this lined up, this is going to happen. We're doing positive things to bring down the cost of the operation. Households in this community have to tighten their budgets. We have people in this community that have been unemployed for 2 years. What did they do? Do they come back to the village board and say, give me some money, give me a handout? No. They had to make adjustments. This village board has to make adjustments. Across the United States, small communities like ourselves have made adjustments. They've eliminated things, they've cut back, they've realized some things that they have that they don't really need. It's nice to have, but when times get tough, things that are nice to have, you don't have to have. That's the kind of action people want to see. They want to see positive action. And that's what the resistance to this bond is going to be, is what else are you doing? What can you tell us you're doing to cut the cost of the operation of this unity?
Mr. Haney, I disagree with your comment about that we have done nothing to reduce costs. We couldn't have turned the general fund from the deficit to the positive in 6 years' time if we weren't cutting costs. You're aware we haven't been able to do streets, correct? You're aware we've had a vacancy on the police department for 6 years or 5 years now, correct? You're aware that we froze employee pay raises for 3 years, right? You're aware of all those, and yet you're gonna say that we have done nothing to condense costs?
You have not recognized places that made a significant difference in the
Where?
budget.
Excuse me, so where?
Where?
Yes,
We don't need a police department.
we don't?
No.
How long have you lived here?
In this area, 46 years.
In this town?
In this town, 13 years.
I lived here 46 years.
You know what, we're, the
I'm not
comments
getting
that,
into it.
you
You've
know
got
what,
public works
Mr.
department,
Haney,
you-
Mr. Haney, Mr. Haney, with the comment, the item here is the Chicago water rate increase. We're not talking about general finance, we're not talking about budget. If you'd like to make a comment about the water rate, and I think you've done and you've finished, if you'd like to make another one about the water rate, I will hear it. But we're not gonna debate village finances, costs,